Hi there, I'm Des.
And I'm Tim, and together Des and I head up the men's ministry Momentum Australia.
Momentum has multiple functions, but primarily our aim is to help men to succeed in life, to do life better.
We run a weekly radio show that goes all around Australia where we talk about anything and everything that relates to men.
And you know, we encourage men to do life in community, to do life with other men where we can be accountable, we can be welcome, we can be open and honest about what's happening in our world.
We'd love you to have a look around our website. That's momentumaustralia.org. There you'll find a bunch of resources to help you on your journey and all of our previous episodes and topics.
We thank you for your interest in Momentum Australia, and we hope you enjoyed this video today.
Okay, well, welcome once again to Momentum. It is Tim and Des with you all around Australia, and wherever you're listening in the podcast, wherever you might be, hey, it's really great to have you tuning in as well. We absolutely love this space, and hopefully you get something from listening to the show each week as well. Des, as always, great to have you here, man. How are you doing this week? You good?
I'm doing really good, yes. It's really great. You know, it's really great to be able to sow into the lives of men that we will never meet. Certainly the side of heaven, we'll never meet them, but we sow into their world to help them to do life better, whatever that looks like, whatever that feels like. And certainly today's discussion is no exception. And let me just say, guys, if you have got a few minutes, have a look around our website, momentumaustralia.org. Lots of feedback information on there. There's lots of resources, all our previous podcasts. And if you want to donate to Momentum as a ministry, that would be amazing as well.
Yeah, absolutely. That is momentumaustralia.org, our website. While you're there, of course, you'll see it, and behind us, if you're watching on YouTube, the number for the care line, that's 1-800-000-636. It is a confidential care line, and I just want to highlight the importance for us as guys. One of our key messages here at Momentum is for men to get connected, to not do life on your own and get connected. Now, whether that's in a small group, whether that's one-on-one, or if you don't feel comfortable with that, by ringing somebody on a care line that you can have a confidential conversation with. And I just want to bounce off a conversation I had recently with somebody, and they opened up to me, and I don't know this person terribly well, but they opened up to me about something that had happened to them decades ago. And they said to me, look, I've actually never shared this with anybody. And just in that moment, I got the kind of chills to go, this is a really privileged space. When another man says that to you and you hold that space with no judgment, no criticism, and you just hold that space and listen. And we all need that. We've all got stuff in our lives that we need a space like that to have. So if you don't have a human physically to do that with, you can call the care line, 1-800-000-636. Certainly do it face-to-face as well. If you can, that's probably better.
Yeah, and don't forget, guys, our YouTube channel. We recently started to load all our previous podcasts so you can see us as well as hear us. I know that's a bit scary. Richard's such a good-looking guy, you know, it doesn't affect him. But for the rest of us, you know, we don't necessarily want to be seen. But just remember, YouTube channel, Momentum for Men. Subscribe, like, share. It helps that channel to grow. So that's really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. It is good that you get to see our guests and not just hear them, of course, because obviously you get to paint a different picture of the visual space as just the audio space. And I certainly encourage you to check out the YouTubes. There are ever-increasing videos on there. You know, recent figures show that a third of Australians feel lonely. That is some or all of the time, a third. And interestingly, this number has actually increased from 1 in 4 people feeling lonely prior to the pandemic. Now, you'd think that we would feel less lonely since coming out of isolation, but that seems to not be the case.
So you wonder, why is loneliness affecting so many of us? What impact does loneliness have on us as people, but our mental and physical well-being? And how can we take steps to move from loneliness to actually enjoying solitude?
Yeah, it's going to be a really great chat, and we always love having our good friend and counselor, Richard Fay, on the show. Welcome back to Momentum, Richard.
It is good to be back with you two and everyone listening again. Thank you.
Matt, we do love our conversations and we tend to go deep. So let's launch straight into this. And actually, before we actually launch into the show, we should preface that all three of us actually managed to get a lunch within the last few weeks, which was awesome. Yeah. And out of that actually came this conversation that we're about to have today. Because we kind of put Richard on the spot and said, Richard, what's some of the key things that men come and see you for in the counseling space? And this was one of the key things, Richard, that you said, this idea of men feeling lonely. I mean, everybody generically, but men particularly, this idea of loneliness. Just expand on that to launch us into the show.
Well, it was Mother Teresa about 30 years ago said that the great poverty of the West is loneliness. And it seems to be particularly true for men more than women. I walk into shopping malls and go past those cafes that dot all shopping malls, and I take a cursory glance and notice that almost everyone there is women. And women seem to find no trouble finding women to talk about life and share their struggles, their lives with. But I'll rarely find men find that easy to do, particularly face to face, very hard. And so men will often just be busy doing things and therefore not being known. And so they end up feeling very alone and as a result, very lonely in their journey. It's especially true as we get older, as we become, if we become busy with our careers, busy with our families, we become more and more isolated as we get older.
So why do you think that is, Richard? I mean, clearly men in their work situation or, they go down to their local tavern or whatever, they can talk to their mates. But it's that sense of, talking about what's internal that men find hard to do, isn't it?
They've never had it modeled for them. Their father has never
Yeah.
said these words, "I love you, son,"
Yeah.
and hugged him. And
Yeah.
so it then to break that sacred, it's not sacred, that terrible silence is terrifying and feels very unnatural. And so they aren't able to look any man in the eye or even any woman and say, "You matter to me. I value you. I'm here for you." Or, "I need to share something with you." As you just said earlier, Timothy, this capacity to be vulnerable and transparent was never modeled for them. And it was often stupid stuff like stuff about sport or stuff about politics or their jobs. Oh, how many men just talk about their jobs or stupid, dumb things that we use to avoid the conversations we want to have or the code which we use to talk about conversations we want to have and we never have. We never have. And strangely, the man puts on the mask and he laughs at the bar and he's talking with his mate and he's carrying on. And wasn't that fun? And aren't we all so happy? And then he gets in his car and the emptiness and silence and loneliness sets in again. The thing that he scaffolded while he was in the pub rushes back in the moment he's alone.
Yeah, wow. That's powerful. I mean, that's a powerful image, Richard. And I think one that most guys, to some degree, if it's not that scenario, we can relate to that. The scaffolding of, going into the social situation and putting on the facade to some degree, but then not really ever having the conversation that we need to have. I think, when we think about loneliness, a lot of us, maybe this is right or wrong. If I think about loneliness, I attribute that to a feeling, how that makes me feel.
Yes.
When I think about being lonely, what does that make me feel like internally? But I want to go to, I suppose, putting some language around loneliness. And the Australian Institute of Health and Welfare considers loneliness as, this is their description, subjective, unpleasant, or distressing feeling of a lack of connection to other people, along with a desire for more or more satisfying social relationships. So that's how they've kind of termed loneliness. I'm going to throw to you and say, would you agree with that? If we put language around this idea of loneliness and us feeling lonely, particularly as blokes, does that kind of paint a picture of it?
Yeah, though it's probably a bit technical, that language, so I'll make it a bit more personal. Loneliness sucks.
Right.
I know I'm laughing, but it does. It's a desolating,
no question.
It's a desolating experience of saying, I don't belong and I don't matter. It's a feeling of I have been rejected by others. They don't want me. I've been abandoned by others. They're better off without me. I have been neglected by others because I'm boring, I'm uninteresting, I'm stupid, I'm ugly, I'm dumb, I'm not talented, I'm not gifted, I'm not special, I'm not interesting. Nobody would want to hang out with me. And I ache for it. I've got this hunger for it, but it's something that I want to avoid, this hunger, because it's desolating, because I don't believe I'll ever know it.
Yeah.
Or I might have once known it, but those days are over. And now I've just got to deny this feeling as much as I can. But of course, it keeps showing up. And every time it does, I want to push its head back under the surface because I don't like it, because I don't want it, because it tells me I don't matter.
And it's interesting. I actually interviewed the CEO of Lifeline in Port Macquarie yesterday, and that same conversation we had, where that the next step of that being in that position leads to thoughts of suicide and ultimately maybe being suicidal. And so it's a very dangerous place for anybody to be, but particularly us men to be.
Can be precarious.
Yeah.
And here's the funny thing. Funny, strange. Loneliness is an enormous gift. If I did not have loneliness as a desolating experience, I'd be a hermit.
Yeah.
In other words, it's loneliness that gets me into relationships. It's loneliness that causes me to approach and engage. In other words, loneliness becomes such a painful experience. It reminds me that I do belong and I'm meant to belong. And I said earlier to you, men, before we started recording, the first not good in scripture is it's not good for man to be alone. And it's interesting that it's man in this situation because it's just Adam. It's not good for man to be alone. That's the first not good. In other words, not even God thinks being alone is a good thing. And my faith tells me that God is Trinity, therefore God is eternal community. Therefore, belonging is a perpetually necessary, and I mean eternally necessary reality for everything God creates. I need to belong.
That's right too.
And I can't get rid of it. So loneliness, therefore, strangely, is a gift.
I mean,
If viewed the right way.
I've never heard that. I've never actually heard that. Let's come back and unpack that. Let me just, I suppose, define the difference between loneliness and being alone, right? Because this is what you're saying, right? So there is a difference between, hey, this sense of loneliness versus just, I'm alone at the moment, but that's okay.
In fact, I can just be alone and that's okay. I can be alone and enjoy solitude, which is not okay. It's wonderful. I'm enjoying my own company, my own space. I'm doing something that brings me alive. I'm planning to walk the Camino, the Way of St. James in Spain next year, which is going to be 40 days of walking alone. And I relish it. And there's no sense of, oh, I won't have any friends. No, I'll be exploring and discovering the world I'm in and my own emotions and thoughts, my relationship with God. I will constantly be gathering the threads of belonging within me. And so solitude is simply a delightful experience of our uniqueness and our value experienced by ourselves. And being alone, it could simply be I'm on my own on a train or a tram or a bus or in the car, and that's okay. I'm fine with that. Or walking down the street. You can be surrounded by people and feel the most alone, like you're at a party or a function or an event. And you don't know anybody and you don't feel like you fit in and they're not your crowd or you're meant to fit in. You have to perform in some way to fit in. And that's when loneliness can be most pronounced, isn't it?
So is it a matter of perspective, Richard? If you have an inward perspective, then you're going to feel lonely and be alone. Whereas if you're on your own and you have an outward perspective, then you won't even think that way.
It's an internal judgment about a perception of your belonging in the world. So that if you know you belong in the world fully and richly and deeply, you're never alone. But no matter where you are, if you feel like you're not welcome or you wouldn't be welcome or you're bad or you're stupid or all the things that I said earlier, you're not enough, you're a failure, you're a loser, whatever, then being alone is a crippling experience of being crowded in by all those thoughts, which amplify the sense of I'm not, I don't belong. And that's a horrible feeling because it's also, I'm going to say it straight up, it's a lie.
Yeah.
And it is always a lie. Even if we experience it to be a crushing truth, it's still a lie. And therefore, the journey from loneliness to belonging is certainly perceptive, but it's the journey that we have to go on of discovering, where did this come from? Where did this what gave birth to this? And how do I then learn to cherish and love those parts of me that feel completely cut off and isolated? It's as if you could imagine this, that when you are feeling extremely lonely, there are a whole lot of frightened little boys inside you at various ages crying out for love.
Richard, you mentioned something profound, which we'll go back to and then I think unpack a little further, that this deep, suppose, sense of loneliness comes from a sense that we don't belong. Now, whether that's in our social circle or whether that's in the world at large, but there's something within us that feels like we don't belong. And I might get you to repeat it, but you said something about there's little boys inside us at different ages that just are crying out for love. Just unpack that for us about how that then sows into this sense that we don't belong and we feel lonely.
In a time and space somewhere in our past, we were exiled. And exiled is this place where we're in a place where we don't belong. I'll give you an example from my own life, and that is that I did a whole lot of solo sports like long distance running and weightlifting in a gym because I didn't belong as a boy. I was not coordinated. I was uncoordinated. And so that when they're picking teams in the playground, when they're picking every boy but me, and of course the last boy picked, in fact, we don't want Fay. Well, you can have him. We don't want him either. He's only going to make us lose. Now you laugh.
Wow.
You laugh, and I can laugh now.
Yeah.
But if I go back more than half a century, I can tell you that little boy's not laughing.
Yeah.
He doesn't belong. And it's a devastating experience to know that you want to belong, but you don't. And when a group, that's called rejection, when a group doesn't include you, you experience rejection. And so if here's how it would show up as an adult, not so much anymore. If I see a group of in a room, I'm in a room full of people, and there's a group of men especially talking over there, then immediately an assumption is that they don't want me there. I'm not welcome there. Wow. And of course, that belief will keep me away from that group. Or alternatively, it'll cause me to crash into that group and say something or do something to try and earn my belonging. And then I'll end up embarrassing myself by putting on a mask and projecting a version of me that I think they might accept or laugh. In other words, I'll tell a joke, and then if they don't laugh, oh dear, what's happened? In other words, it's either I retreat into the shadows or I crash into a social circle, rather than just walk in and wait for them to welcome me because I belong, because I'm me and I'm enough. But the boy will show up in my body, and the boy will say, don't go over there. Those men, they have got each other, but you don't belong there. And I know that experience in my body as the boy telling me that. It's no longer true in me at all. And it's interesting, it's funny. I've looked at myself as I've gone through life, that I've become a leader of every circle I've stepped into, largely because it gave me a role so I could hide behind the role. And as I get older, I don't even want the role. I just want to be there. And I don't have to do anything. I can just be me. And when a man discovers that if he can just observe and participate in any, I would say to every man, find a circle. There's all kinds of men's circles around Australia, often in churches, but not always, where you can show up, as you said earlier, Timothy, without judgment, without being fixed, without being controlled, without being advised, just being heard, and that space being held for you. And suddenly you discover that's what belonging looks like.
Yeah, that's good. And you're right. I mean, there's men's sheds, there's walking groups, there's all sorts of groups that men can join where they just need to go along.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Richard, I mean, I kind of laughed, but I think all of us on this call, when you painted that story, going back to those early years of school or high school or whatever, I think most of us have had a similar experience to some degree.
Yes.
Whether it was the sporting thing or, just in the class, or we sit on these tables together in this desks in this order, whatever it may be, we can all have some degree, I suppose. Do you think that that is for men partly then when we get to adult stage? We even that sense that you were like, when you're in a room and you see other blokes in it, we have this hesitation. Do you think that's where, for most of us, the challenge has actually started? It's in the younger years that things have shown us that we just don't belong, we don't fit, and so we carry that into adulthood.
We do, and there's two things happening. One is that, as I said earlier, as we get older, we get so busy with the things that we can control, the things that we can. I can earn a wage. I can do this job. I can go to the shed and fix something. I can run an errand. I can do something. So I get busy doing, and I never experience being in the company of others where I'm not having to do something. I've heard this definition of friendship, which I find is the best definition I've ever heard, which is to waste time with someone for no productive outcome. Isn't that a beautiful definition of friendship?
Yeah.
Waste time with someone for no productive outcome. And do you know what, as a child, you know that space, or hopefully experience that space, even if only in passing, as the most joyous space, the space where you truly do belong, because the first half of the word belong is from the word belong. In other words, it requires being. It's not do long, it's belong.
Yeah.
And so when we've had those moments, but then we get experiences of pain and isolation, we avoid. And so the two things that happen, I watch men go in one of two directions. They put on an incredibly good mask where they become Captain Socialite, the life of the party, laugh out loud, or he becomes some variation of that, Mr. Professional, super successful, talks about all his accomplishments, or he becomes the timid guy who is dutiful, compliant, respectful, polite, but shut down. They're the ones I'm always paying closest attention to, because they're the ones who believed I could never play the social game of the mask wearing. And so I am apprehensive about being found out as a fraud, as an imposter. So I'm just going to be quiet and polite and respectful. Those are the men. When I was a pastor of a church, as a counselor, in any kind of social situation, I look for the lonely man, the outcast. Why? Because that man is actually being honest, because he doesn't know how to wear a mask. So many of the other men are faking it. They're both as lonely as each other. I used to envy the man who would put on the mask and look super successful and think he's got it all together. And it's only later on that I realized that's always a lie. Because it's the vulnerable man, the transparent man, the honest man who's the real man. The man who lets himself be seen and known. And knowing that even if other men can't handle that because it threatens them, that man's got great strength because he knows how to belong wherever he is. He doesn't care what other people think. He's been written.
He's got an inner strength.
Yes. And often it doesn't look like strength, because it will look like an honesty that's not hemorrhaging. It's a vulnerability. This, in other words, I can talk about my failures now. And it's usually when I talk about my failures and my struggles that other men start nodding in understanding. Oh, I know that.
It's true.
And suddenly there's a camaraderie. Now we're all connected.
And now they're all starting to be honest.
And now nobody cares about how much anybody earns or, you know, what their golf handicap is. That's gone out the window.
I think I'm going to encourage the guys to go back and listen to that last 3 to 4 minutes, because I think for a lot of guys, that will be a huge relief. Just hearing what you've just shared, in the fact that we all struggle with that to some degree, and yet some of us mask it better than others, let's be honest. And I think when you realize that, and this is the thing, I think when we moved in the circles that we now move in, and you just get to the vulnerability piece and you go like, I'm okay with sharing some of that stuff. It takes a huge weight off your shoulders. Richard, I want to go in a different tangent before we run out of time. And I just want to quickly give some stats around the effects of loneliness on us. And the stats are: lonely Australians have worse physical, mental health, more likely to be depressed, 4 times more likely to have chronic disease, 4.6 times more likely to have depression, 4.1 times more likely to have social anxiety, 5.2 times more likely to have poorer well-being. Effects of loneliness are equivalent, this is interesting, to smoking 15 cigarettes or having 6 alcoholic drinks per day.
Wow.
Loneliness is a silent killer. We know that. Lonely people have a 26% increased risk of death. In other words, almost a quarter more likely to end up taking their life as a result of loneliness. I mean, that is some of the impacts of loneliness, Richard. So I suppose when we hear that, that is profound. Loneliness is not just I just feel a little bit alone. If we sit in that space too long, it could have really dire effects, not just on our mental and physical well-being, but ultimately whether we check out early. Let's be honest.
Lonely men live 9 years less than men who are deeply connected.
Wow.
Now, if I said to you right now, I'm going to take 9 years off your life, not for any reason associated with drugs, alcohol, or exercise, simply, or diet, simply because you're not socially connected. What are you going to do about that? I've heard it said, we'd give anything in 20 years' time, 30 years' time, we'd give anything to be as healthy and so on as we are right now.
Yeah.
And you don't think, surely heart disease, cancer, and so on are not caused by loneliness, but they are. They absolutely are. And here's the thing that I want to flip it with and say, you will be surprised at how welcome you are in the 100 different ways you can show up. Do you like to play cards? You can go and find a group that plays cards. Do you like drama? You can join an amateur drama club. Do you like to sing in a choir? Go join a choir. Do you like to, and I could keep naming it. You said walking earlier, Des. There are men's walking groups. There's one I know of called Soul to Soul that meets every year and goes walking in the bush. I'm about to go and spend, I'm a father and a grandfather and been married for 40 years. And in 3 weeks' time, I'm going away with 2 mates for a whole week into the bush to have fun. And I can't wait. And do you know that at the age of 50, I had no friends?
Wow.
I'm 64 now. I had no friends at 50. No friends with whom I could be completely honest and vulnerable. And the only thing that changed was I learned that it was safe, and I learned places where it could be safe for me to be seen and known. And then I discovered that I was welcome. In fact, that I was a joy and a blessing to others.
Yeah.
As in other men, they loved having me around. I didn't believe it. I honestly didn't believe it because of stories I told you earlier. And I wanted to say to every man, you will be surprised at the ways in which men can connect all around this country right now. Men shed. It is a wonderful thing for men to get involved with. Volunteering, if you're older, is a fantastic way to connect. Don't wait and say, I'll do something about that next year, which is, the person who says, I'm going to kick this smoking habit or this, I'm going to get serious about exercise next year. This is not a next year or a next month thing. If you're listening to this recording now, I would want you to say, after you listen to this recording, what are you going to actually put in motion? Seriously, if you have felt seriously lonely in the last month more than once, if you felt like a sense of futility about life or a sense of there's nothing, nobody would want me, if you felt that more than once in the last month, what are you going to do after this recording that will engage you in connecting with others? Don't wait because they don't know you. You have to walk into that space. Let your loneliness be the kick up the bum. Let it be the invitation to get you into it, because it is. That's why I say loneliness is the great gift. If you keep seeing it as a reason to keep the prison doors just get closer and closer, the whole bars just close in on you.
Yeah, it's powerful. And I just want to acknowledge as we wrap up the show, for all of us, we can attest to when you first start that journey of showing yourself and being vulnerable and stepping into spaces that are unknown, it is uncomfortable. It is scary. You will want to not do it. You'll probably put it off a few times. It is a vulnerable space to step into, but the freedom that you find on the other And as Richard was saying, the chance that you are going to be accepted on the other side of that is very high. And the joy that you find in that will far outweigh just that little moment where you have that, I'm not sure about this and I want to stay where I am. We just want to encourage you on this call to absolutely do what Richard said. Start reaching out. If you're feeling lonely, take the gift and go and connect. Go and find a point of connection, whatever that looks like for you. What a wonderful conversation. And hopefully you've got something out of this. Again, I would encourage you to go back and have listened to parts of this that are just really profound. And we always expect that when we chat to Richard Fay. The journey from loneliness to solitude has been our topic with Richard Fay. Richard, as always, an absolute pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching this week's show, and we hope you subscribe to Momentum so you can find out what's happening in the shows in the future.
Absolutely. And keep an eye on our website too. That's momentumaustralia.org. There you'll find all of our shows and a whole heap of resources to help you on your journey. That is momentumaustralia.org.
Until next time, keep moving forward
with Momentum.